Greetings, Nick Bogart with Sweetwater here, and today we're looking at the Tech 21 Steve Harris Signature SansAmp pedal. And for more information, after the video, go to sweetwater.com and find more stuff out. This cool-looking and sounding device resulted from a collaboration between Tech 21 and the legendary Steve Harris, the bass player from Iron Maiden, the godfather of the gallop. This unit looks as good as it sounds, and if you're wondering about the blue and claret finish, it's very simple. Steve Harris is a huge supporter of West Ham United. It's his favourite English football team. And by the way, football in English means people kick the ball. Football in American means everyone picks it up and one guy occasionally kicks it. But whatever, we're two countries divided by a common language, but united by music, metal, and of course, Iron Maiden. The backstory on the SH1 is simply this. Steve's tech, Michael Kenny, lives in LA, and he's got a buddy called Doug Pinnock, who's a great bass player and the frontman of King's X. Doug happens to have a SansAmp signature pedal of his own. Michael heard it, loved it, sent it to Steve, and Steve said, hey, I'm about to do the British Lions tour. I can't take 8 4x12 Marshall cabs out with me. Let's see if Tech 21 can put my sound in a little box. And they did, and the result is what we're looking at now, the SH1. This rugged little unit has 2 foot switchable channels. Channel 1, and wait for it, Channel 2. Each of them have their own individual level and gain controls, and they share a 4-band EQ network, which is active. And when I say active, I mean they can cut and boost as well. And the cut and boost are pretty extreme, plus or minus 18 dBs to be exact. So dial carefully, my friends. That's a lot of cut and an awful lot of boost. The pedal has 3 foot switches. Let me quickly run you through what each one of them does. The middle one switches it on and off. And when it's on, the EQ lights light up. Check it out. Off. On. Dun, dun. Now, this button here switches the channels. When it's channel 1, these two, the level and gain, are blue. When we go to channel 2, those go off, and the level and gain for channel 2 go on, and they glow red. So blue 1, red 2. Easy. And the third and final button activates the built-in Chromatic Tuner. Check it out. Dun, dun, dun. Tuner on, pedal muted. That means you can tune in silence on stage, and it's also handy for changing guitars silently as well. Now, if you're super observant, you've probably noticed that I haven't mentioned one of the controls, namely this one, the blend control. What that does is that blends your direct guitar signal in with the SansAmp tube amp emulation signal. And of course, you want to hear all of that. So in 99.9% of the cases, you have blend full on, so all you hear is the SansAmp emulation that the company's world renowned for. So the only thing left to explain on the front panel is the 3 buttons. And they're very simple. One is a ground lift. I'll explain more about that in a minute. The other one is the speaker emulation, and that's vital, and we'll talk about that in more detail in a minute as well. And the last one is something called bite. Now, what does bite do? Well, according to the Tech 21 boffins, what bite does is kick in a Steve boost, which gives you more cut and definition and clarity when you're playing clean, and when you've got some grit involved, which you can get lots of with the gain that this pedal has, it gives you more attack and more definition as well. With the front panel explained, all that's left to talk about is the inputs and outputs, and then we can get on to the sounds of this great unit. There's only one input, a 1/4 inch, which comes from your bass. As for the outputs, there's 2, a regular 1/4 inch and an XLR DI out, and that's where the ground lift comes in. Thanks to these 2 outputs, there are 3 ways you can run this device. You can use it as a stomp box, straight into the front of an amp, or you can run it into a power amp and use it as a preamp, or you can use it as a DI, which is what I'm doing here, but I'm also using it as a preamp. So you can use 1 or 3 of the above. And at this point, I should also mention where the EQs sit. The high is at 3K, the low is at 50 Hertz, mid 1 is at 200 Hertz, and mid 2 is at 500 Hertz. And that gives you a really broad band of EQ control. As for the speaker simulation button, that's pretty important. A big part of Steve Harris's unique sound are the EV speakers he loads his Marshall 4x12s with. And according to him, that's a make or break factor within his tone. And to be honest with you, speakers are often the red-headed stepchildren of rig rundowns. People look at guitars, pickups, strings, pedals, and amps, and forget to talk about what speakers are in the cabinet, which is a shame because that's where the sound actually sees the light of day. That's what you hear it coming from. So the speaker is very, very important. What it does or doesn't do ultimately colors the sound and makes it what it is. It's a huge part of it. And here's the reason Steve likes the SH1 pedal so much. I'm going to quote him directly from the well-written manual that comes with the unit. Here's what he says about the designer. He's managed to simulate my EV speaker sounds, which I love so much. And it's in this little box. Whatever he's done, he's made this thing sound like my sound. So well done, mate. Well done indeed. And incidentally, when you buy the SH1, it comes in this cracking little biscuit tin. What's a biscuit tin, do I hear you ask? Well, once again, that's an example of two countries divided by a common language. You call them cookies, we call them biscuits. Got it? This is a great biscuit tin. One of the many cool things about this well-written manual that comes with the SH1 is this. It has sample settings at the back. And the first one is really, really important because it's Steve Harris's own personal setting. And that's what you heard on the play-in. So my buddy Tom, who was playing at the start, was using Steve's personal setting. And if you want to hear it being played on the Trooper, if you go to our website, right below this video, there's another video with a guy doing exactly that, and he also does a really good Geezer Butler impersonation as well. So talking of Steve Harris's personal setting, it's very good for just general stuff. So here's Tom playing a neat little arpeggiation using Steve's personal setting. Did I say Steve's personal setting? Because that's what you're listening to right now. The other suggested settings are based on Steve's favorite players and also his influences. So let's check out one called Geezer from Black Sabbath. And once again, I'm going to hand it back over to Tom. The next suggested setting we're going to take a quick look at is named Phil Lynott, after the late, great bass player and songwriter and singer for Thin Lizzy. So I've added a little bit of phase, and this is that setting. Next suggested setting, a really subtle one. This one is entitled Lemmy. Yes, I think the late great Mr. Kilmister would approve of that one. And thanks to Digital Magic, I'm now armed with an LTD bass loaded with active pickups. So let's stick on the Lemmy, roll the gain back a bit and see what happens with one of my favorite bass riffs of all time. Right, one more setting before I'm out of here, and this one's called Deep Purple, and this is the only bass riff I know from Deep Purple, and it's a classic. So here we go. So far, all the examples you've heard have been predominantly metal. Surprise, surprise. Hey, it's a Steve Harris device. That said, as you've probably ascertained, this is not a one-trick pony. This has so much tonal versatility, you can use it for almost anything. Funk, jazz, soul, fusion, whatever. In fact, one of the suggested settings is simply entitled Jameson/Motown. We all know what that means. Yup, one of the greatest bass players to ever walk this planet. And he picked with only one finger. And Steve only picks with two, so I guess I've got a lot of work to do. And that concludes our short, sharp look at the SH1 signature Steve Harris SansAmp pedal. And if you're wondering how good the unit is, well, let's just put it this way. Steve is now not only using it within his rig with the British Lions, it's also a component in his Iron Maiden touring rig. And hey, if it's good enough for Steve Harris, it's certainly good enough for mere mortals like thee and me. For more information on this fine device, please go to our website, or better still, call your sales engineer, and he or she will be only too glad to guide you through its many wonderful features. Right, that's enough from me, so I'm going to hand back over to Tom to play us out. Thanks for watching. Toodle pip!